Welcome to Getting to the Heart of Business, brought to you by TheOnlineCo, where we believe the best way to help small and medium businesses grow is by putting people first. I'm James Parnwell, and in this episode, we talk about the hugely important and mysterious topic that is SEO. It's such a huge area with so many tasks to be done, it's hard to know where to start. So today, we're going to give you 7 things to help you get off the ground. If you've been doing SEO on your website for a while, then this acts as a little like a checklist. However, if you're new to SEO, then these 7 items are the perfect place to start. I'm joined as always today by Jess. G'day, Jess.
Hello, James. And we've got a special guest today. And our special guest is Rich Brown, who's our head of SEO here at TheOnlineCo. How are you, Rich?
I'm very well.
That's very good. Rich, I'd love to know, what is your earliest memory of SEO, or your earliest SEO memory?
Well, I started my first website in late 98, early 1999.
Wow.
And yeah.
Was Google around then?
It was,
Okay.
I guess. I didn't really know about it. I think within that year, 1999, I had heard about Google. And so somehow they had my email address, and I got an email from them saying, hey, we got this new thing called analytics. Would you like to sign up? And you can find out who's coming to your website and how they're getting there. And I was like, sure. So I signed
This
up.
new thing, Google Analytics. That's awesome.
I don't know how new it was. They'd probably tested it before that, but I was one of the first people to sign up for it. So.
Well, okay, so that's going back, 24 years ago?
20 is 99, I would say. It might have been 2000 when that. I don't know. I'm fuzzy on the details, but
wow.
Very early Google days.
Yeah.
Safe to say you've got a fair bit of experience then.
Yeah, I like to say that I stumbled across SEO because I had a website and I was getting traffic and I didn't know why. And then this analytics thing sort of gave me insight into where they were coming from and what terms they were using to find me. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. And so
rest is history, as they say.
Yeah, that led me down all sorts of different pathways, most of them dodgy at the time, but
Very good. Well, I suppose then with that much experience, what's the stupidest SEO mistake you've ever seen?
There's so many to choose from.
How do you pick just one?
Yeah. I mean, the first one that comes to mind is if somebody doesn't allow Google to crawl their website. So they've set their website to the whole site says no index, and you're telling Google not to put you in the index. It's probably the worst mistake you can make.
So some websites have just a button, just like a little checkbox.
WordPress has a magic button that some people, if you've built your website, maybe you rebuilt it, it's on a staging site, and you've got the box ticked that says, don't crawl my site, tell Google not to crawl my site, and your developer puts it live, and then 3 months later, you're like, why aren't we getting any traffic? You go there, it's probably that button is ticked.
You just forgot to tick that one.
It's about as bad as it gets, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's pretty frustrating.
Well, in today's interview, we want to give you 7 things that you can get stuck into that'll help you grow your business by getting more people to your website. And one of the things we pride ourselves in here at TheOnlineCo is not using jargon when we're talking to non-technical people. The problem is with SEO, it's a bit hard because some things only have a technical name. So what we're going to do, we're going to get Rich to give a technical answer in as clear English as he possibly can. Then I'm going to give an analogy of how that works. And then hopefully you can get 2 perspectives on the action point. And fingers crossed, you'll then be able to anchor both the technical and the real world.
This is going to be a good episode.
I'm sure it will.
I like that we're going to cover both angles like that. Shall we jump in? Should we get started?
Do it.
Let's do it. Okay, so let's go to SEO action item number 1, which is make your homepage clear as crystal. So I guess that seems obvious, Rich, but could you explain this a bit more?
Yeah, so, your homepage needs to say, like right off the bat, you want people to land there and know what you're about. And that's can be really hard. You want, like, depending on what you do, if you have a variety of services, usually they're in a specific area of business, but you want to have a statement that sort of summarizes it all very clearly. And if you can put a keyword in there, that's great. A keyword or 2 in there is great, but it doesn't have to be that way. You want your homepage to sort of be an About Us page. Like the idea of an About Us page is still relevant, but you really want your homepage to be all about your brand. So you want people to land there and go, oh, I know exactly where I am. And then you want to make it really easy for them to reach out to you. So you want to have a clickable phone number that's kind of stuck to the top right of because everybody knows to look to the top right for a clickable phone number. And you want to have maybe a call to action, right? What we call above the fold, wherever they land on your screen, when they land there, you want the call to action to be there. And then you want your link to your important services or products right there too.
So it's still above the fold?
If you can squeeze it in.
Yep.
Like some people make the mistake of filling the entire screen with a hero image, and the owners think it looks great, but it's not helpful. Honestly, it's like you want to leave a little bit of real estate for some of the services you offer. You may have a really cool picture you're attached to, I don't know, but just try to make it, try to fit as much in there as you can without it being too busy. You don't want to go that direction either. You don't want it to be too busy.
It's like a fine line you're trying to balance.
Yeah. Sometimes people are like, they try to pack everything they can in there, and you land there and you don't know where to look. So if you're doing that, then that's a clue that you're too busy. But then just underneath the fold, or close to the top, you want to provide what we call social proof. So testimonials, reviews, people say that have used your services or bought your products that are saying great things about you, just to make people go, oh, cool, I'm where I need to be. People like them. I'll scroll further. Maybe I'll even click on a link.
All right. Okay. So James, I'm sure you've got a good example now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think we've spent many years sort of dialing in our website, so TheOnlineCo.net. So if you want a good example, that's a place to start. But you want people to be able to digest information quite quickly, because people don't have long attention spans. And I think that's what Rich is talking about. But you also want them to feel nice, to come to the website and it feels good. So the example I use is if you're at the beach and you decide you want fish and chips for lunch, and you look across the shops that are opposite the beach there, and you see a shop that says fish and chips. And so it's said clearly to you what it is. Now, if it says Jill's Boutique or something, or Jill's Food Place, you don't know what it is, right? So say what you are, say what you do, make it clear.
There's a good example of that up the North Coast. There's a fish and chip shop called Aussie Bob's, but it just is Aussie Bob's.
Well, yeah. So someone comes to your website.
Who is Aussie Bob?
It says, welcome to Aussie Bob's. And you go, what do you do?
Like, what is Aussie Bob? Yeah.
Yeah, you could be anything. Well, then you're going to go up to the actual fish and chip shop. In order, you got your money in your hand and you're ready to buy lunch. And then when you walk in, if it feels a bit gross, like it looks a bit dirty, or the bain maries look a bit scungy, or the lighting's not clear, or I don't know. You know what I'm talking about, though. You walk into a place and it doesn't feel right. You're going to walk back out again. So you want it to communicate very quickly, and then you want it to feel good. And a shop is a really good example, because shop owners spend tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars making their shop feel great. So you feel good in there.
So essentially, you would just want to do the exact same on your website.
That's right. Yeah,
Perfect.
That's right. Get them on there.
Yeah, when I talked about the hero image, you want to pick something that's appealing and relevant, and sometimes it can be really hard to find the right photo. But
okay, well, let's keep going. So we'll move on to action item number 2, which is optimize the meta titles of your webpage. I
Sounds
guess
like jargon.
this is one of those technical ones that
no
has
easy
to
way
stay
to
technical.
that.
But yeah.
We're trying not to be jargon, but okay. So I'll try to explain what a meta title is. So on every website on the internet, there's a lot going on in the background that you don't see. So there's code and all that stuff. So a meta title is, the easiest way to describe it is, it's the blue bit that you see in the Google search returns. When you search for something and you see a list of websites that show up in the return, there's the blue bit and then the little description underneath it. The title is the blue bit. And you want to think, every website has the ability to edit this, whatever you're using. WordPress makes it very easy. Some CMSs, content management systems, do not. But these are the most important parts of SEO. You want your titles and your descriptions and what we call an H1, which is your headings, to be very clear. You want them to have the keywords that you want people to be using to find you. You want them in there. it's basically an advertisement. You think of it as, you look at the ads that are up above, and they're trying to entice you. This is what you're using your title and meta description are basically your free ads. So you want to write something that's keyword rich, that draws people's attention, that's relevant, so Google will list it there, and then will draw people into your website. And there is a character length. There's a character length limit for the title as well. It's actually a pixel size. It's depending on, because Google is all about mobile now, so it's a hard one to get exactly right, but a lot of tools out there will show you you've gone too far, or you don't have enough, or whatever. And the meta description also has a character limit as well. So it's a little bit like writing for Twitter. You can only do so much, but you have to really get very creative sometimes to pack as much enticing and relevant information into the title and meta description as you can. But as I said, they're the most important factors for SEO. They're the number 1, 2, and 3: title, meta description, and H1. Although many SEOs will tell you that meta descriptions don't matter as much as they used to. Might be true, but there's still, you want people to click on your ad, and the meta description is the copy that you use to entice them with what you're offering. So, and the H1, these days I try to get my H1 to match really closely to my meta title as I can. So when people see the meta title, they go, okay, cool. And then they go to the website, and then what we were saying in the previous action item, they see it's exactly what they said it was going to be. It's the exact same thing as that title that I saw in Google. So
no, that makes sense. I think you've done pretty well to take something that's fairly technical and explain it. I think, James, I'm sure you're going to have another good analogy for those of us that need analogies.
Well, if you go into a bookshop, all you can see generally is the spine of the book. Like, they're all lined up, and you're going to choose whether to look at that book or not based on what's on the spine. And you can only fit a few words there, and it's pretty much how Google works. If you then pick up that book and you open it, you might read the little introduction in the front sleeve. That's a bit like your meta description, but you really don't have a lot of words or a lot of time to convince people to come to your website. And so the meta title and the meta description are the two things that people use. It's also the thing that Google uses to decide where to put you based on the keywords there. So
I think that's a brilliant analogy. I don't think I've ever heard anybody explain it. Meta titles and H1s and keywords like that. Okay. And whoever's listening to this, that is gold. You need to save this part of the podcast specifically, because that is brilliant. We'll carry on. So action item number 3. So make your website load more quickly. I hate slow websites.
If we're only that easy. So last one was starting to dive into technical SEO a little bit, like behind the scenes. This is fully technical. It's very behind the scenes. So Google in the last year, so 2021 in June, made part of the algorithm this thing that they call Core Web Vitals, which is basically Google's attempt to try and measure user experience on a website. And one of the biggest factors in that is performance, which performance equals how quickly your website loads on mobile specifically. Desktop, still a factor, but Google's interested in mobile because everybody uses their phones for everything these days. So if your website doesn't load fast on mobile, you're losing. You are not doing well. Google will penalize you for that. So depending on where your website is hosted, there's a variety of things you can do. It depends on your host and what you're using to build your website. So if it's WordPress, there are plugins you can use to increase your page load speeds, caching plugins. There's a few really good ones, but it's not just a set and forget thing.
Yeah, it's complex,
it requires constant checking and tweaking. It's not something that, like I said, it's not set and forget. It's not something that goes away.
It's not something you do once when you set up your website.
I wish it was.
I've done that task. Now we can carry on. Yeah.
No. And oftentimes, if you're paying $20 a year for hosting, you're probably not. Your
getting $20
your page load speed is probably suffering, and I would guess why does my site load so slowly? Well, maybe you're not. You need to spend a little more on your hosting. You need to make sure that your host gives you lots of memory, that you're not hosted with 150 other websites. Some of those websites may be pulling bandwidth from yours. You just need to make sure your website loads quickly. You could type into Google, why is my website not loading quickly? And you'll get a whole list of answers. Google has a tool called Lighthouse that is an extension for the Chrome browser that you can use to check your page load speed. And it'll give you a whole list of suggestions, and you'll see that list if you're not technical, and you'll be like, whoa, I don't know what to do here. That's where you go, maybe get in touch with someone like TheOnlineCo or your developer, whoever built the website, your host, any of those things. And I just recommend you do whatever you can to make sure that your site, that you're scoring at least 80 or above would be optimal in that performance score for Lighthouse.
Okay.
Well, it can often be, Rich, just the size of the images. Sometimes people
upload that's true.
massive image sizes. So that can be a good place to start that most people can understand.
That's true.
The analogy I'd use here is if you're in a running race, and I haven't been in a running race since school. So obviously the aim is to get across the line first. And with SEO, the goal is to get in position one. And if you start that race and everybody's lined up there with their running shoes on there, and there you are with army boots on, you're going to run pretty slow and everyone's going to beat you. And Google really look at this and they go, hey, everybody's loading fast and you're as slow as a wet week. Need to speed up, man. Get rid of the army boots.
I want to jump back to what you said about images, because that's I totally forgot about that. But that's a simple thing that you can do right away without being too technical. So oftentimes a mistake website owners will make is to upload, like they'll just take an image right off their phone and just upload it to the website, and they're usually like 5-7 megabytes.
Massive, yeah.
Yeah, you need to resize those images and optimize them before you post them. And there is a website that I use. It's great because you can actually resize the images there. You can't crop them, but you can at least. Okay. I say that the max width of your images should be 1920 pixels wide at this point. Maybe in 10 years it'll be wider, because 4K and monitors and all that stuff. But right now, 1920 is about as wide as you want to go. Mm-hmm. And you don't want anything if it's 1 megabyte, that's too much. 500 kilobytes, that's half a megabyte. Bordering on too much, but it's probably okay. You don't want to go any higher than 500 kilobytes if possible. So resize your images. Use that app that I said, Squoosh.app.
Any of these tips that Rich gives, and there's links or websites, we'll definitely put those links in the show notes. No need to grab your pen and paper out, everybody. All right, we'll keep pushing on. So we'll move on to SEO action item number 4. So see what Google is showing for your website using site:/yourwebsite.com.au. I think you're going to have to unpack this one a bit, Rich.
Yeah. So Google has this fun feature. Google is full of hidden features. This is just one that you can use to see which pages on your site Google has indexed and which ones are most important. So if you do this site:, go to Google, type in site:, your URL, your domain, and then Google will show you all the pages that are in the index and in order of what it considers most important. So if you put that in and there's nothing, no returns, you got a problem. you're not in the index. Oftentimes we see that, a website that people think, I've only got 10 pages on my website. You put that in, why do I have 500 in here? Well, you've got too many listed. So there's things that you don't need to list. It's complicated, but sometimes WordPress can just create pages and pages of archives is what they're called, like for depending on categories that you've set up. So there's a bunch of pages that don't need to be listed at all that you can hide from Google and just keep your core content there. And this is just a really good way to, get a quick pulse check on Google to make sure that the balance is right, that the pages you want listed are on Google. And then that first page of results, your most important pages should be there. So if you look at those results and you're like, why is that page on the front? Then that's a clue that you maybe need to re-optimize some of the pages that aren't appearing there.
Yeah, that's a really good point you've made that you said at the beginning. So Google will show you what it thinks or what it deems is your most important pages. So as you've just said, if you've got some weird page turning up there that you're like, hang on a minute, that should be archived or that's just not,
like blog page 4 or something, and you're like, what?
Okay, that's good. Okay, I'm sure, James, you've got a good example for this one. This
Well,
one lends itself to a good example.
yeah, I suppose if you've been playing sport or something and you've hurt your arm and it's in pain and it's not working properly, you'd go and get an X-ray and it would tell you if you've broken your arm or not. And it's the same if your website's like it's not working properly. There's people, no one's coming here. This is kind of the same thing. Let's get a look inside what Google's seeing, and find out what's broken in Google's index. Just gives you a look at what Google's seeing.
And this is free, right? Isn't it? You just go into Google, type this
Yeah.
in, and yeah.
Go to
and it'll show.
google.com.au, type
You
in.
can do it for any website on the web. You can
Yeah.
look at what your competitors are doing
Yeah.
and all that stuff. So
Oh, that's good. That's
yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll keep going on. So we'll move on to action item number 5, which is submit a properly formatted sitemap to Google.
All right. So Google has another free tool called Search Console. So Google's full of free tools.
They're full of free tools, aren't they?
Yeah. Yep. How helpful they are is debatable, but they're
Well, you've got to know how to use them.
sometimes
right?
they're a little frustrating, but this is a good tool for this. So this Google Search Console, you can, if you have an analytics, if you have a Google account, you automatically have Search Console and all this stuff. You just maybe haven't accessed it yet. So there's a type of file, sitemap.xml, that hopefully you can find a way to automatically generate for your website, and it will just be a list of all your pages on your website. It'll just be all the URLs in this special format that Google understands. And it will have one of the most important aspects of the sitemap is that there's a frequency line item, and it tells you when it was last updated. So this is Google's way of checking which pages have been updated the most recently, because that's what Google wants, is fresh content. So if you look at any news website, they'll post a news item, and within minutes it'll be on Google in their news feed or whatever. And the reason for that, one of the reasons, is because Google knows they're a news site. They're updating stuff often. So Google is crawling their website often, checks the sitemap, goes, oh, look at that. This just came out. So, okay. Google's going to crawl it and list it. So if your website, you're getting a few tips here because
that's great. No, it's good.
I
think
you have fresh
gold.
content. Yeah. You have fresh content on your website. The more you keep your site fresh, I'm not saying publish content for the sake of publishing content, but keep your site, update your site, keep it fresh. At least once a week, update something on your website. Google will crawl it more often, and you'll have more priority in the list of where you sit in the index because of that. So
when you say update something, so content, you alluded to content. Do you have any other sort of quick and easy examples of things that people could do?
So if you've got an article, let's say you wrote an article, a good example is like something trends of 2021. Well, it's 2022 now, so you need to update that article to be for 2022.
Yep.
Or you can, in a Search Console, you can identify, you can zero in on the content that's performing on your website. So you can click on a URL and you can see that it was performing and it hasn't been updated in a while, and the numbers might be starting to drop. So maybe you need to review that article and update it so it's more, you only have to update like 20% of your article for Google to take notice. So the sitemap, to get back to the whole point, is there to just to keep Google informed as to what's newest on your website and what pages it should crawl. So if you have WordPress, there are plugins that will do this automatically for you. So that's really handy. When you hide certain pages from Google's index, they should not be in the sitemap. So you don't want to confuse Google by having things in there that you don't want indexed. Just keep it clean.
So I feel as though, James, this is a good time for our non-technical friends to get one of your very friendly and useful analogies. As good as your answer was, Rich. Well, I appreciate that. But
if you wanted to have Google over for dinner, it wouldn't be enough to say, hey, I'm in Sydney. You'd have to give them your address and then a map to get there. And I suppose if Sydney's like the internet, there's, I don't know how many houses are in Sydney. 3 million? Something like that? Let's say 3 million.
Something like that, let's say.
Someone can tell me if I'm wrong. There's an awful lot of houses, right? So it doesn't know where you are. You've got to tell it exactly where it is and then how to get there, all the streets to get there. And then that's basically you're saying, hey, Google, here we are. Here's all of my streets. Come over for dinner.
Okay. So this, I mean, that sort of helps lead into our next action item. Rich, you were touching on content. Um, so action item number 6 is write an article that answers a customer's question.
Yeah, it's kind of an obvious one. So you might even have, as a business, you might even have an FAQ page on your website. You've probably got a list of questions that customers ask often. So rather than the old school way was to have on an FAQ page, you've got a list of 15 questions. You answer the question in one line, move on to the next one. A good thing to do is to unpack that question a little more, maybe do a little research and see if you can get even more specific or find a better question that maybe more people are asking that are the same question, maybe just at different words. Create an article, write an article that answers the question as succinctly as you can in the first paragraph, but then go into detail. Write a 700-word
really
article.
Great idea. Like,
yeah, it
I don't
works.
think anyone would have thought of that, just to really like pack it out. Like,
Yeah.
FAQ
So on your
section.
FAQ page, you've got this list of questions. You know that they're questions people are asking. Rather than answer the whole thing right there, you provide a summary, and then you have a little link off to your article where they can read the full answer. And then your FAQ page becomes a little more interesting and interactive and connected to the rest of your website. There's a lot of tools you can use to do what I just said. Find out what questions people are asking. There's a tool called Answer the Public that does it in a very pretty way. The results are just fun to look at. It's like a little matrix surround. There's a little icon of a person appears, and then you basically type a keyword into that tool, and then it'll give you all the who questions, what questions, how questions, why questions, and in a nice little round grid.
It is very fun to look at.
It's cool. So you might find, oh, that's really a great way to ask that question. So you might have new questions. You might have a whole another series of questions that are related. So
oh, that's a really great idea.
You want an analogy?
I reckon you've got an analogy.
I've got a really complicated one. Just imagine.
I mean, I was trying to think of one, but I mean, you are the analogy king.
Well,
I think this is the best analogy yet.
Imagine you're sitting there at a cafe, someone asks you a question, and then you answer it.
Or better yet, they come into your business. They come into your business and ask you a question, and you answer it. You have the answer. Whoa,
that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So you would know. If you're working in your business and you're talking to customers, you know the questions they ask.
You get the same questions all the time, right? Like you get the same questions all the time about SEO.
Write it down.
It's a great way to get relevant traffic to your website. People want answers.
Yep.
That's why they go to Google. They have a question.
That's what they're typing in Google. So you may as well use that, right?
Yeah.
And so our last action item, so number 7, keyword research is the most important part of SEO, but it's massive.
Yes,
I think you're going to have to really break this one down a bit, Rich.
Yeah. So keyword research, for new clients, it can take between 6 to 12 hours to do keyword research. What you want to do as a business is start off with a list of 10 keywords that you think people will be typing into Google to find your business. And then I recommend that you use Chrome browser and get a plugin or add-on called Keyword Surfer. And what that does is it adds information to the search results. So you take those keywords, put them into Google with Keyword Surfer installed, and then you'll start to see data attached to those results. So you can choose which country you're in with that, which country the results data is for. And the data you'll see is the most important data for you to pay attention to is the number next to the search term in the bar. And that is the average monthly search volume, which means how many times that term was searched for in Australia. That's what we use to determine the value of the keyword. If it has a higher number, then it's got more searches, so it's probably more valuable to you. The tricky thing is to not get so fixated on the numbers that are super high, like the broad keywords. I'm just trying to think of something like electrical services. It's pretty broad. It's going to be location specific. So, you might, if you put your suburb at the end of it, that's going to be more specific. You're going to get results for your area. It's probably not a good example because it's so local based. I'm just trying to think of something like buy books or something, it's so broad. Don't get fixated, because that would just return like 28,000 searches. And because it's a big number doesn't mean, oh, I can do it. It means you'll have more competition and it's tougher to get. So you want to focus on, you want to choose keywords that are really what we call long tail, that are more focused towards your business, especially around local. If you're a local business, local is more and more important than anything these days. It's the thing on Google.
When you say keywords, you don't just mean typing in one word. You could type
No,
in, when you say long tail, that means a bit of a phrase, right? So
yeah,
it might be, buy books from here, or electrician services.
Yeah,
Sydney,
or you could even get more, maybe you're a niche bookstore, like a specific kind of book, like the more specific you can get.
So you could be like
something
vintage
about your
caravanning books, or something like that, like something super niche.
If that's
niche.
Yeah. If that's your niche, then live in the niche. Like
maybe I'll discover myself a new hobby.
Yeah, you want to own the niche. You want to own your portion of Google. Like, you really want to own it. So figure out what that is.
Okay.
So yeah, Keyword Surfer it'll give you the numbers, but it'll also give you recommendations. So on the right in the results, you'll see keywords, and it'll show you the volume for those as well. So you're like, you may have typed something in and maybe it didn't give you, maybe 10 searches a month. And you look in the right, you might be like, oh, surprised at some of the things it recommends. So start to build out your
so you start with what you think you should have as your keywords, and then you get the suggested results and sort of build on it a bit.
Right, because business owners tend not to really actually know the keywords they think they do, and then they end up like, they're usually really broad, but they need to be more. Being more specific is tougher. And just start to build out your list. Just start a spreadsheet and cluster them together. Like, don't just put them all in one big line and then call it good. Try to divvy them up by topic. Try to keep them closely clustered. Like, books is a good example, because books might be its own topic, but then you've got several different, science fiction, nonfiction, fiction. You could have all these different clusters. So you want to just start to break it down and categorize it so that you're really clear about what terms are valuable, and then you can start optimizing your site with that.
Yeah. So we've got a free workshop on our website where Rich spends an hour unpacking that in more detail. He's given you the sort of quick fix approach. That's not the professional approach we take that takes hours and hours. That's the if you're a novice, a beginner, or a business owner just looking to get some understanding, that's where to go. I'll give my analogy.
Come on. It's the last one. Round us out.
Well, I'll use Sydney as an example again. Is that there's a lot of roads in Sydney. There's obviously the really big ones, the motorways that connect everything to everything else. And there's loads and loads and loads of people driving on those roads. So there's lots and lots of traffic. But then you'll come off those roads and then there'll be main roads in towns. Still plenty of traffic on them, but not as many as freeways. Then there'll be some side roads and some less main roads. And then there'll be your back streets where there's houses and there's cul-de-sacs and hardly any traffic. And the search, your keywords are very similar. There's your really, really heavy, busy ones, right down to your really small niche ones. And typically, if you can get onto some of those main roads in a town or those side roads, you're probably likely to do quite well. Don't target the really big ones, and the really small ones, perhaps there's nobody going down there. It's those ones that are either in the middle or sort of smaller than middle. They're the really useful ones. So try and put your website by using keywords onto onto the good roads that'll find you good traffic.
I think that was, as the action item said, keyword research is massive. the analogy in your answer, Rich, you guys did well to break that down as best we could in a short podcast.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Rich.
My pleasure.
Been great having you along, and thank you, Jess.
My pleasure as well. Thank you, James.
Now, all of the links, as Jess said, are in the show notes. If you need help with SEO, we obviously have a workflow. We can do it all for you. Just jump on TheOnlineCo.net and click on that "Let's have a quick chat" button. We'd love to talk to you and see how we can help. This episode of Getting to the Heart of Business was brought to you by TheOnlineCo. It was produced and music by Harry Parnwell. You can find us at TheOnlineCo.net. If this has been helpful, we'd love you to share it with someone, subscribe to our podcast, and leave us a review.